Ambassador Feinstein, the floor is yours. Lee, please.
Thank you for not asking me a question to start. This way I will don't have to be non-responsive like the rest of my colleagues on the panel. It's a real pleasure to be here today on this distinguished panel, and I want to thank my good friends Janusz Ryder and Janek Smolar for the invitation, and also to congratulate the Center for marking NATO's Poland's accession to NATO with this important conference. The Center plays an important role in Warsaw's intellectual life, and it's also personally a real delight to be here with many friends and former colleagues from the think tank world. In Washington, they say that entering government is the end of reading. And I can tell you that that's not been my experience, but it is certainly true that in Washington, and I assume in Warsaw as well, that think tanks provide a real opportunity for practitioners to recharge their intellectual batteries. It's something I've taken advantage of, and the Center is a real important asset, and it would be for any country. So, of course, now I'm here serving as the ambassador to Poland and the center of Europe, and in that capacity, I will address Washington's priorities as NATO seeks to update the strategic concept, which was, as others have pointed out, last written when Poland became a NATO member, and clearly a lot has changed in that time. I thought I'd begin with a few underlying premises about American policy, and the first is an insight about President Obama's foreign policy, and that is simply that no one country, no matter how large, no matter how powerful, can confront the challenges of the 21st century alone. And from this critical insight derives a second premise, and that is that in confronting these challenges, nowhere are there better, more serious, or more valuable partners than in Europe, despite the differences that we've discussed at this panel. In Europe, we engage with partners who are prosperous, who are, for the most part, militarily capable, and centrally democratic nations with whom we share fundamental values and interests. And this is a fundamental insight because transatlantic solidarity is essential to meeting the very complex challenges that we face, which we have discussed this morning. Whether the issue is promoting a Europe that is whole and free, whether the issue is Iran, whether the issue is Afghanistan, whether the issue is energy security, or other security challenges which we all jointly confront. And this brings me to a natural second premise, and it goes to a point that Robin made earlier. Of course, there has been debate in the United States in the past, in the last administration, and even in the previous administration in which I served, as to the proper role of Europe and whether a strong Europe was in or not in America's interests. And that debate in this administration has been resolved, and the United States believes that a strong, cohesive, united, effective Europe is clearly in America's interests. And the United States looks forward to working closely with Europe as a partner in meeting the security and economic challenges of the new century. And it's precisely for that reason that the United States strongly welcomed the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty in December. As well, since we're in Warsaw, we strongly support the government of Poland's emphasis on strengthening CSDP and on strengthening links between the EU and NATO. So how does this all relate to the strategic concept? Well, first, as others have said, the first person to say this to me was Professor Rothfeld, who is sitting here. If Professor Rothfeld says it, it therefore must be true. But others have also said it, such as Secretary Gates, which is that the strategic concept review is not intended to reinvent the wheel, nor should it be an overly long or overly detailed document. The issue for the strategic concept is, I think, what everybody on this panel has been saying between the lines, which is that we want a document that will be succinct, that will hone the missions for NATO, and that will be compelling, and in particular compelling to a new generation in confronting this century's challenges, and for whom the events that compelled allies to get together after the Second World War, the events of the Cold War, are not a personal experience. And this is really essential. And this is, I think, really the animating force of the strategic concept review. The United States is looking forward to the work of the Wise Persons Group, and we have enjoyed consultations with the group, and we look forward to its report to the Secretary General as he drafts it. We've also stated in different formats and occasions and in different ways some of the principles we'd like to see guiding the ultimate result. And I will just touch on a few in light of the short amount of time and to leave some opportunity for questions. First and foremost is that NATO's security promise remains unchanged. Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, an attack against one is attack against all, is the bedrock of the alliance. President Obama said that very eloquently when he said, "It's a bond for our time, it's a bond for all time." And no adversary should question our commitment in this respect. There are out-of-area threats we as an alliance face in other parts of the world, but, and again this goes to Robin's point, we view peace and stability in Europe as a prerequisite for meeting challenges elsewhere. So Article 5 is the raison d'etre of the alliance, and for the United States, the only ally on whose behalf Article 5 has been invoked, this is an obligation that will not change over time. And for Article 5 to be effective, we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared through exercising. We need to be prepared through planning. We need to show and ensure that NATO is prepared to confront the threats we face to the territory and the citizens of NATO. And President Obama has said that NATO must have contingency plans in place to deal with the new threats, wherever they come from, and that tasks need to be reflected in the strategic concept. And that's what we're asking the strategic concept to do. And again, elaborating a little bit further in light of what Robin talked about as some of the concerns he expressed, history has taught the United States that security risks in Europe, in Central Europe as well, are threats to all of Europe, and that the security of all of Europe is a vital national security interest of the United States. Second point I'd like to make briefly is another aspect of the Article 5 responsibility for territorial defense, which we believe should and ought to include and does include missile defense. The United States has responded to our threats not only by maintaining nuclear deterrence, but also by developing a missile defense system designed to protect U.S. territory and population, and as well the territory and population of NATO and its allies. And we believe NATO needs to develop a missile defense architecture so that it can defend itself. And the Obama administration's new approach to missile defense, the phased adaptive approach, will be our contribution to that new architecture.